Locked and loaded. We are recording. This is fantastic. Hello, everyone. Jacque Howard here of the Trenton 365 show. But tonight, I'm going to be wearing a few different hats. Many of you who've tuned in over the years know that I'm a big fan of biking and cycling. And I think that Trenton is one of those communities that has an awesome biking culture and a biking subculture. And it's poised to be able to take that culture itself, along with some other funding and some other initiatives that are happening, and expand what's happening regarding bicycling. So today or tonight, I've got a couple of friends that I've got on, and I've got Sonia, Cessna, and I'm going to try to make sure I get her name right. Sonia, Cessna, and Jeffrey Laurenti. And we are all part of the Trenton Cycling Revolution, a new nonprofit organization that has over 20 years experience advocating for cycling in the state of New Jersey and specifically in the region of Trenton, New Jersey. Tonight, we're going to be talking about some things that are happening, and we'd like to get out to you some information about biking in Trenton, New Jersey, and in this region, but also to bring you some information about what's happening regarding skateboarding and the potential skate park, as well as a neighborhood initiative over here in my neighborhood in the Franklin Park area, as well as some of the thoughts that are going on in Sonia and Jeffrey's mind as they advocate for cycling in different segments of this region. So without any further ado, Sonia and Jeffrey, welcome to the Trenton 365 Zoom that's going to be shared all over the place.
Great to be with you, Jacque.
Excellent. So, Sonia, I'd like for you to jump in first, and I want you to talk about your day job and what that consists of and how that's tied into biking in the region.
Sure. So as my day job, I work for an organization called Tri-State Transportation Campaign. We're a nonprofit in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut that's really poised to improve the commutes of people, whether it's by transit, biking, or walking. So we're really trying to get people out of their cars and give them safe options to get around to where they need to go. And as part of that work, I'm the New Jersey Vice Chair of the Circuit Trails Coalition. So the Circuit Trails are an 800+ mile network of off-road trails in the greater Philadelphia region. So in New Jersey, we're in Mercer, Burlington, Camden, Gloucester counties. And we're trying to connect this giant network of trails together so you could travel like a bike interstate. And I think Trenton in particular is at the nexus of a number of those really exciting trails. So it's really cool to be here.
Yeah, cool. And why don't we just jump right into it? And Jeffrey, we're going to have you give a chance to share a bit about your background as well. But Sonia, can you just touch on the amount of trails that are around here that are part of this network that I think a lot of people don't realize are opportunities?
Yeah, so in particular, if you think about Mercer County, we have the Delaware and Raritan, which I'm sure many people have been on, whether they know it or not. That's a pretty lengthy trail that runs from like Lambertville all the way to New Brunswick through Trenton. You can find it right by the Battle Monument. Then we also have the Johnson Trolley Line Trail, which has potential to connect to Trenton, though it does not yet. And that is an old railroad line that's actually goes through Lawrence and is cut off by the I-295 interstate. So one huge project that some of the advocacy groups that I work with were pushing for is a connection over that interstate to connect the two different segments of the Johnson Trolley Line Trail. And then probably one of the most exciting trails in the county is the Lawrence Hopewell Trail. So if you've been on that, it's a 22-mile loop, totally paved, really great, accessible. You should go on it. Go.
And can you also just touch on the Cyclovia event that took place recently in partnership with Art All Night, or excuse me, Art All Day?
Yeah, sure. So Cyclovia is this kind of event where we look to reimagine our streets for people instead of cars. So, and I think we've been seeing a lot more of this now that COVID has really changed the way we think about getting together and gathering. So we felt very fortunate that we could still put on an event where people were able to be distant and outside, but it was basically a reimagining of the streets and bringing art out into the street. It was a collaboration between Artworks and the bike groups in the city. So we took over Front Street and brought out a whole slew of awesome partners that I don't even want to list because I know I would forget someone and I would feel really bad. So If you want to see a video, I'll share the link later. You could see what the general vibe is, but 2 years strong. We're hoping to do another one next September.
Jacque, can I just weigh in on
Yeah,
what
please.
Sonia
But
had?
Jeffrey, before you do that, I'd like for you to introduce yourself and share a little bit about who you are and how much biking you do in the area and how long you've been an advocate for cycling.
Well, I am the septuagenarian in this pack and have been cycling around Trenton since these trails began to take shape some 30, 35 years ago. In fact, I had been, as a young legislative aide for the state Senate, responsible for language that then Senator Joe Merlino inserted into the Delaware and Raritan Canal Park Commission enabling legislation for a requirement that the pieces through the urban areas, which were specifically New Brunswick, but most of all Trenton, had to have particular priority for the commission, because the fear was that the original citizen pressure for the canal's maintenance or development as a linear park was going to be out in the rural areas of Somerset and Hunterdon. And we needed to make sure that there was some legislated protection for the Trenton piece. Because when you think about it, Trenton has now become the center with multiple spokes out in different directions of trails already existing. Now, Sonia has already pointed to the northeast direction from the Battle Monument on the DNR Canal to Princeton and New Brunswick. You have the northwest direction on the feeder canal, also part of that DNR Canal Park, going from Trenton through Ewing to Washington Crossing and all the way to Frenchtown. You just cross the Calhoun Street Bridge and you have the Delaware Canal on the Pennsylvania side going up all the way to Easton, northwest, and southwest to Bristol, Pennsylvania. And directly south from Trenton, you have the tail end of the DNR Canal going to Bordentown. In addition, as she pointed out, as Sonia has already pointed out to us, when the connections are made, we then have, through the Johnson trolley line, a direct connection to the Lawrence Hopewell Trail. And that is a pretty amazing package of off-road trails that I don't think any other area with 300,000 people in the Northeast can boast. What we don't have are guaranteed safe riding paths through the densely built up urban core. So the question of how you get from the East Ward, Chambersburg Villa Park, or the North Ward to the center of town, or whether we were able to build through the West Ward yet another connection, which would be the old Delaware and Belvedere line that runs out to West Trenton, pieces of which remain more or less intact. We should be able to have spokes going out through every ward to connect neighborhoods and not just people passing through.
You know,
And
Jeff, I'm sorry, go ahead,
sorry.
Sonia.
I was just gonna include the Assunpink Greenway in that as well. Still developing, but will be great connections throughout the city as well.
Mhm. And Jeffrey, I'm glad that you touched on the neighborhood portions of it as well. Kevin Duddy, who couldn't be with me tonight, lives in the Franklin Park neighborhood here where I do. And our civic association, Franklin Park's Northeast Block Association, has taken on this project of documenting cycling and people who ride bikes in our neighborhood. And Kevin and I came up with an idea and a route to get people safely from Cedar Lane in the Franklin Park section, traveling on Trenton roads to the downtown area, except for, you know, hitting Broad Street. But that's already covered as a cycling area. So we were talking with Wills Kinsley, who also couldn't be on tonight, the current chair of the Trenton Cycling Revolution. And he was mentioning that this is one of the projects that the organization would like to see more neighborhoods take on, because you have a better grasp on what's needed in the neighborhood or what is wanted. But at the same time, it just kind of gives this perception that there's a lot more going on than just a group of people who are dancing around the community.
would you be able to reveal the secret of what the thought is for this projected bicycle route pathway, protected pathway from Franklin Park area towards the center of town?
Sure. Yeah, Jeffrey, the original concept was to stay away from the major streets, so avoiding Chambers and also avoiding Liberty in this neighborhood. So if we stay on Franklin from Cedar, you take Franklin, before you reach Liberty, you make a left onto Varoom, which is Dayton, taking Dayton down to Genesee, and then Genesee down to Mott, or Clinton rather, and then being able to hook up with Broad Street right near the Mercer County McDade building.
Very interesting. And I think you're absolutely right to stay off the major access roads and the major city arteries. And we had a brief discussion, and Sonia had been part of it, just off the top of one's head, a response to city planners asking, we've been looking to figure out a way to get a buffered bike trail through Chambersburg, because you have a large immigrant population, many of whom do not have cars, and who actually rely on bikes, not simply for recreation, not that that should be discounted in terms of its importance, but also to get to their damn jobs. And one thought had been to take a couple of the streets that wend their way through the east and south wards from Hamilton Avenue all the way down to Broad, Anderson or Division, or even Chestnut. Make it one way so that you have a lane that you can open up for a bike lane without any loss of parking.
Mhm.
So that, that becomes one way to knit that side of town together.
Mhm. Jeffrey, I think that is exactly what the idea of it is. Trenton has so many, although it's a relatively small city, land-wise, we do have lots of different pockets, and sometimes there's difficulty with getting from one neighborhood or one location to another, especially with some restrictions. And I think what we came up with Franklin Park, the idea for this was to make it as easily accessible for folks who are already here. They already know Franklin Street, it runs parallel with Chambers, and then to take them away from any of the main traffic and to pass a school, because Franklin Park's elementary school is right along the way as well. And we thought that would be a nice tie-in with having some colorful crosswalks like the TDA has done earlier this year, and some of the other things that are going on throughout the ward. And then to maybe make that location a drop-off location or pickup location for a ride share for bicycles.
You should know, by the way, that Franklin School is where I began kindergarten in 1954.
I love it.
And it was old then.
So Jeffrey, is there any possible way that you can find some old photos or something from back then?
I'd have to look to see whether we had a class picture with all the little midgets.
That's great.
Oh,
That's great.
man.
All
I
right,
mean,
so
I think you guys bring up a good point, though, of like, the residents that actually live in each of these neighborhoods are going to know where they want to ride the most. And something I feel like we've all been thinking about is, how do we develop a process where it's not like no one's going to be able to go to the city and be like, I want all of this done overnight, but it's really about how do we engage residents on a regular basis to make a plan. So like, if the city is repaving a road, they should be putting in the infrastructure as they repave the road. Like, it doesn't have to be like a huge additional cost where we're ripping up roads, but like, how do we develop this process where it's like, these roads are getting repaved, this group comments on like where they want to see the bike lanes, where are the dangerous crosswalks, where do we need traffic calming, and then like, how do we make that work on a city level, but also with the county, because there are a number of county roads that go through the city.
In fact, Jacque, Sonia has been engaged along with me in trying a desperate and failed last-ditch effort to get the the county's repaving of Cass Street to include a bike lane. The county announced it was going to repave. The city had never been informed of this. despite having a complete streets mandate from the County Board of Freeholders, the county administration, Department of Transportation, just went through its priority list. We now have funding. We can do Cass Street, which is a county maintained road. And poof, they announced they're going to do it the next Monday. And folks are scrambling. Can we get a bike lane put in there? Since there are stretches, for example, alongside the state prison, where there's already no parking on one side, and large stretches where there are relatively few houses, could there not be cooperation between the county and the city whenever the county is going to repave a road to see whether it can then implement a bicycle lane in accordance with the county's own mandate for complete streets?
And the city also has a complete streets policy. But I would say this is where it's so crucial that we have like a base of people like that are willing to go talk to residents, because, you know, the worst thing would be to go in and be like, this is where the bike lane's going, and you find out like, you know, it's a problem for X, Y, or Z like reason. So we really need a coordinated effort where, you know, there's open communication between the city, the county, and residents, so that we can, you know, make sure we're getting the infrastructure we want, and also just doing it in an effective way. Like, how great would it have been if 6 months ago we were like, can you talk to the residents on Cash Street to see what they think about a bike lane? And then we could go through the ordinances and the city council approvals we needed to get that done. Can't be done in a week.
You know, I
As
also
we
want to
found
give
out.
I also want to give the county some credit. I mean, for some examples of what I think are good. So I grew up in Ewing, so Ewingville Road as well as Green Lane. I think they did a really good job with not only the repaving, but making it very clear that they're cycling lanes, bicycling lanes. Any thoughts on that?
Totally agree. I mean, they have a great county bike plan. And I mean, Cash Street was in that plan, but it's like, how do you make sure that if it's a slightly harder task, that they still go through with it?
Yeah, in suburban areas, they have a little more flexibility to be able to implement complete streets. Although I would still say that great as it is to have a striped bike lane on either side of Ewingville Road, that does not provide many would-be cyclists who are not the most daring folks a sense of security that drivers will actually heed, and that some teenage driver texting a picture of his naked girlfriend to his best buds isn't distracted while you're in the bike lane and you get hit.
Great. All right. So I want to make sure that we get out the information that really generated this coming together. And Sonia, I'd like for you to share about the giveaway and about what's going to be coming up soon, as well as some of the other events that are taking place.
Sure. So I'll start with, so on Monday, November 2nd, it's the day after daylight savings. We got an awesome donation from the Bicycle Coalition of Greater Philadelphia. We'll be handing out 500 bike lights, so 250 front, 250 rear, at various locations throughout the city. So the plan is we'll have a morning shift from 7 to 9 in the morning, and then we'll have an evening shift from 4 to 6. So hopefully we'll get people riding to or from work or the train station. Right now, our potential locations are the train station, Cass and Broad, and then along Hamilton, probably at the intersection with Clinton. But we also need volunteers to help us hand them out. So if you're interested in helping us hand them out, just shoot us a message. We're all volunteers. So anyone that's able to come out, we would definitely welcome you. And I'll just add that they will also be available at the coffee shop. If you're riding at One Up, One Down Coffee, we'll have a few. So if you ride to the shop, they'll give you some lights. And then the East Trenton Collaborative will have a batch. So if you live in the East Trenton neighborhood, you can go to that center and talk to them about getting some lights.
Let me add detail that One Up, One Down Cafe is at the corner of Cass Street and Adeline. I guess that's the southwest corner of Cass Street and Adeline, 750 Cass Street. And it should be on everybody's discovery list if they haven't discovered it already. as a new option. I would like to also point out that what Sonia has been talking about in terms of reaching out to the public has really got to be part of what we do proactively in the future in order to build among the citizenry a sense of A, the importance of cycling as an option, and B, guaranteeing its safety. And I would also think that we need to be working on finding ways to get our younger people in the city aware of cycling and trails, because what is striking is that the piece of the Delaware and Raritan Canal Path that runs through Trenton, the most densely populated spot of the entire route, is actually relatively the least utilized in terms of the local population using this resource. And I think part of it is that in our schools, we have not educated young people who have to do so many other things. Right now, how do you study at all when you're at home, so-called virtually learning, if learning at all? But even when things return to normal in that regard, learning about the local community that has disappeared from curricula, and certainly these elements of local community, the institutions of community, whether they be civic, political, religious, economic, and recreational. Kids need to be made aware of it, because by and large, most of them go through school without ever getting a sense of how they can be part of these larger institutions of community, which seem to be built in more into some of the more upmarket towns, just spirit, civic awareness.
I think that's a perfect way to finish up, Jeffrey, and you were spot on. Civic engagement is what we all need to build a better community for everyone. The more people who are involved in the process, it's more than likely we're going to have a better situation. Jeff Laurenti and Sonia Cesna, thank you so much. This is a gathering of the Trenton Cycling Revolution. We are a nonprofit organization, but we're all volunteers, and any of you can join us. If you would like to volunteer, if you'd like to learn more about the organization, you're already on one of the Facebook pages that are about this. So just make a message, send it to us, and we'll get back out to you and let you know how you can get connected. This is very much a organic movement, and we want to get as many people involved in this. Sonia and Jeffrey, you have any last words?
Well, I would just say, if you have a thought of something you want to see in the community, or, you know, want to spearhead, that's also like, come to us. We can like help you figure out a way to make it happen.
Jeffrey?
I just want to say how lucky we are to have Sonia Szczeczna active in taking this in hand. She is wondrous in her knowledge of all of the connections. I should add, by the way, one other thing, because I have such a connection right here in the house. My bride is a commissioner of the Delaware River Joint Toll Bridge Commission, and folks should know that the new Interstate 295 bridge at Scudder Falls will have a bike and pedestrian lane. You can see already the ramp now being brought down from the bridge to connect on the New Jersey side at the Ewing access down to the Scudder Falls. And it will be open next year. So we don't have to go all the way to Washington Crossing and to come back on the Pennsylvania side. If you want a shorter ride, you'd be able to do that right there at Scudder Falls and come back to Morrisville.
Fantastic, Jeffrey. Thank you so much for that. And a big shout out to Yuki. Make sure that you tell her I said hi.
I will tell her that.
Awesome.
Oh.
And folks, I also want you to know too that Trenton still has a vibrant skateboarding community that's doing a lot of things as well. The winter months are coming up, and we'd like to encourage you to make sure that you check out Freedom Skate Park on social media. The winter skate program is going to be starting soon, and Jake McNichol can have all your questions answered. All you have to do is go over to the Facebook page for Freedom Skate Park. In addition to that, Friends of Amtico Square is still working to have an outdoor skate park, and there are some things that are coming together with that as well, and this is going to take place in the East Ward of Trenton, New Jersey. So without any further ado, I'd like to say good night to everyone. Thank you for tuning in, and Jeffrey and Sonia, have a great evening.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Jacque. Dziękuję bardzo, Sonia.